Captain Elias Ward crouched low in the smoking ruins, his chest rising and falling as he tried to catch his breath. The battlefield around him was chaos. A once bustling alien city now lay in ashes, its towers broken, its streets filled with the sounds of explosions, gunfire, and the shrieks of dying machines. The night sky glowed red with plasma fire, ships burning as they fell from orbit like dying stars. Humanity had fought in wars before, but nothing like this. The Drael Empire, a species ruthless and merciless, had attacked without warning. Entire colonies had been wiped out, and now this world, on the far edge of Allied space, was under siege. The humans had been sent as part of a fragile alliance force, one that was already falling apart under the sheer weight of the Drael invasion. Elias pressed his back against a broken wall, his rifle clutched tightly in his hands. His helmet visor was cracked, the display flickering, and his comms had gone silent hours ago. Somewhere in the chaos, he had lost his unit. He had seen Sergeant Monroe go down when a plasma round tore through the squad's cover. Private Hensley had vanished in the smoke. Elias didn't know if any of them were still alive. He was alone now, alone on a burning alien world, surrounded by enemies. But Elias was a soldier, a human soldier. He wasn't the kind to give up. He peeked out from behind the wall, scanning the streets. Enemy patrols marched in formation, their insect-like armor clattering as they swept the ruins. Their glowing eyes scanned for survivors. Elias ducked back, quickly, heart pounding. He couldn't take them head-on, not alone. He needed to find cover, find shelter, maybe even a way back to the Allied lines if there were any left. As he moved carefully down a side street, stepping over rubble and shattered glass, he heard it, a sound, soft, faint, crying. Elias froze. His instincts screamed at him to move on, to stay quiet. The Drael sometimes used sound traps, luring survivors into ambushes. But this didn't sound like a trap. It was too weak, too desperate. He crept closer, moving toward a collapsed building, where the sound echoed faintly. Carefully he climbed over the rubble, his rifle at the ready. The cries grew clearer, small, fragile sobs. Elias's stomach tightened. It was the sound of a child. When he pushed aside a chunk of stone, his breath caught. There, half buried under debris, was a small figure. Not human, but clearly a child. Her skin shimmered faintly with a pale silver hue, her hair like strands of light that shifted colors in the dark. Her eyes, wide with fear, were the deepest shade of violet Elias had ever seen. She was trapped, her small leg pinned under a collapsed support beam. For a moment, Elias simply stared. She wasn't human. She was Zarathi, one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. The Zarathi were tall, elegant, proud, with a history stretching back thousands of years. They rarely mingled with humans, and when they did, it was usually as superiors looking down on lesser races. Elias had never seen one up close before, let alone a child. And yet here she was, terrified, alone, helpless. The girl's eyes widened when she saw him, and she let out a frightened whimper, clutching at the air as though to push him away. Elias slowly lowered his rifle, setting it on the ground. He raised his hands to show he wasn't a threat. "Easy," he said softly, though he doubted she understood English. "I'm not here to hurt you." She blinked at him, tears streaking her silver cheeks. Elias crouched closer, carefully testing the beam. It was heavy, far too heavy for a child to move. He tried lifting it, but even with all his strength, it barely shifted. The girl winced, gasping in pain as it pressed against her leg. "Hang on, kid," Elias muttered. He looked around quickly. The street wasn't safe. Enemy patrols could be anywhere. But leaving her here wasn't an option. His training told him to survive, to regroup with his unit if possible. But his heart told him something else. He couldn't abandon her. He had seen too many innocents die in this war already. Elias adjusted his stance, braced his legs, and pushed with everything he had. The beam groaned, scraping against the rubble. Slowly, agonizingly, It lifted just enough for him to grab the girl and pull her free. She cried out, clutching at his chest as he scooped her into his arms. The beam crashed back down with a thunderous thud. The sound echoed through the ruined street. Elias cursed under his breath. That was going to draw attention. Sure enough, a distant screech rose, a Drael war cry. "They heard us," Elias muttered. He adjusted the girl in his arms, grabbing his rifle with one hand. "Looks like we're both in trouble now." The child buried her face against his armor, trembling. Elias felt her tiny fingers clutching desperately at him. She didn't know who he was or why he was helping her, but in that moment, he was all she had. He ran, through the ruined streets, across shattered plazas, ducking through alleys where shadows might hide them. Behind him, the clatter of armored feet grew louder. Plasma fire streaked past, scorching walls and shattering stone. Elias fired back blindly, forcing the patrol to scatter, but he knew he couldn't hold them off forever. He needed a plan. He needed somewhere safe. His mind raced as he sprinted through the burning city. The humans had established forward posts earlier in the battle. Most were probably destroyed by now, but maybe, just maybe, one was still intact. If he could reach it, they might have evac. But the girl in his arms groaned softly, her leg twisted unnaturally. She wasn't going to last long if he didn't treat her injuries. Finally, Elias spotted a half-collapsed building that looked stable enough to hide in. He ducked inside, sliding behind a broken pillar just as more enemy fire lit up the street. Outside, he held his breath, clutching the girl close, listening as the patrol thundered past. Silence. For the moment, they were safe. Elias set the girl down gently on a flat piece of rubble. She winced, biting her lip, but made no sound. He quickly checked her leg. It was swollen, badly bruised, maybe fractured. He tore a strip from his own undersuit, fashioning a makeshift bandage to wrap around it. The girl watched him with wide, uncertain eyes. When he finished, she whispered something softly in her own language. Elias didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. "Gratitude. Don't thank me yet," he said quietly. "We're not out of this." She tilted her head, not understanding, but her small hand reached out to clutch his wrist. For a moment, Elias stared at her, this fragile alien child who should have been an enemy, yet now relied on him completely. And then, as he looked at her shimmering hair and violet eyes, realization struck him. He had seen her face before, on briefing reports, on Alliance intelligence files. This wasn't just any child. This was the princess, the daughter of the Zerathi queen herself. Elias's heart skipped a beat. If the enemy found her, the war could take a disastrous turn. If she died, the Zerathi might withdraw from the Alliance altogether, and humanity would be left defenseless. He swallowed hard, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. He wasn't just carrying a child. He was carrying the future of the galaxy, and he was the only one standing between her and certain death. Outside, the screeches of the Drael echoed again. They were searching, closing in. Elias tightened his grip on his rifle, his jaw set. "All right, kid," he whispered, pulling her close again. "Looks like it's just you and me now." And with that, Captain Elias Ward prepared to face the nightmarish gauntlet ahead. The battle was far from over. But he wasn't going to let her die, not while he still had breath in his body. The ruins were dark, lit only by the faint red glow of burning ships above. Smoke curled through the streets, carrying the bitter smell of plasma and scorched stone. Captain Elias Ward crouched inside the half-collapsed building, his rifle across, his knees, his ears straining for the sound of enemy boots. Beside him, the little Zerathi girl sat quietly, her violet eyes wide, her silver hair shimmering faintly even in the gloom. She was still clutching his sleeve as if letting go would mean being lost again. Her small frame trembled, but she made no sound. Even in fear, she was disciplined. Elias glanced down at her, his heart heavy. Hours ago, he had thought only of survival, of finding his squad, of making it out alive. But now he carried something far more important than his own life. The child wasn't just a civilian. She was the daughter of the Zarathi queen, a princess. If she was lost, the alliance itself could collapse. He sighed, rubbing dirt from his visor. Why me? He muttered under his breath. Of all the soldiers in this war zone, it had to be me. The girl tilted her head, not understanding his words, but watching his face with a strange curiosity. Elias softened. Doesn't matter. You're stuck with me now, kid. She blinked once, then slowly leaned closer, resting her head against his arm. The gesture caught him off guard. For a moment he forgot the burning city, the approaching patrols, and the chaos of war. For a moment he was just a man holding a frightened child who needed him. But the war never stayed far. A sound broke through the silence, a metallic clatter. Boots. The Drail were sweeping the streets again. Elias tensed, raising his rifle. He placed a finger gently against the girl's lips. Shh. They waited in the shadows as the patrol passed. The alien soldiers moved in formation, their insect-like armor glowing faintly as they scanned the rubble with mechanical precision. One paused near the building, turning its head toward the darkness. Elias's heart pounded. His finger tightened, on the trigger. The child squeezed his sleeve tighter, her small breaths quick and shallow. After what felt like an eternity, the soldier hissed something to its comrades and moved on. The patrol continued down the street, their footsteps fading into the distance. Elias exhaled slowly. That was too close. He looked back at the girl. She was still staring at the door, her tiny body stiff with fear. Elias reached out and gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze. It's all right. They're gone. She looked up at him, eyes shimmering with tears. For the first time she whispered a word he didn't understand, but the tone was clear. Relief. Elias nodded. Yeah. We're okay. For now. Hours passed. Elias dared not move while the enemy still searched the ruins. He sat against the wall, his rifle within reach while the girl curled up beside him, her head resting against his side. Despite the fear, exhaustion finally took her, and soon she was asleep. Elias watched her, his thoughts heavy. She looked so small, so fragile. And yet she carried more weight than she could possibly know. She was the heir to an empire. The Zarathi were proud, powerful, and often cold. But seeing their future like this, a child clutching at a human soldier for comfort, Elias felt a strange sense of responsibility. He thought about Earth, about the families back home, hiding in bunkers or waiting for news of sons and daughters fighting in distant wars. He thought about the Alliance, about the Zarathi soldiers who often dismissed humans as reckless and weak. If they only knew. If they could see this moment, maybe then they'd understand. When dawn came, filtered through the smoke and ash in the sky, Elias knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. The girl's leg was injured, swollen, and bruised, and she needed real medical care. He had wrapped it as best he could, but it wasn't enough. He tapped his broken comm unit. Nothing but static. If he was going to save her, he had to find an allied post. Somewhere with working comms, somewhere with evac. He crouched beside her. All right, kid, we're moving. She stirred, blinking up at him sleepily. When she realized what he meant, her eyes widened with fear, and she shook her head. Elias gave her a small smile. I know. It's scary out there, but we can't stay. Here. Trust me. The word trust meant nothing to her language, but the tone seemed to. Slowly, reluctantly, she nodded. Elias lifted her into his arms again, careful with her injured leg. She wrapped her arms around his neck, holding on. Tight. He adjusted his rifle, slung over his shoulder, and stepped cautiously into the ruined street. The journey was slow and dangerous. Elias moved from cover to cover, listening for enemy patrols. Twice they had to hide as Drail squads passed close by. Once they nearly stumbled into a drone sweep, the machines buzzing overhead with scanners. The girl was quiet, never crying out, never complaining, though Elias could tell each step sent pain through her leg. Her courage impressed him. At one point, as they paused in a collapsed stairwell, she touched his chest plate, tapping it lightly, then pointing to herself. She repeated a soft sound. Her name. Elias tried to repeat it, stumbling over the alien syllables. She giggled softly, the sound bright even in the ruined city. Then she pointed to him, tilting her head. He smiled. Elias. She frowned, trying to mimic it. As. Close enough. For a brief moment, amid the fire and ash, there was laughter. By midday, Elias spotted what he had been searching for, the remains of an Allied forward post. The barricades were shattered, the turrets silent, but the structure still stood. Smoke rose from inside, but he saw the faint glow of a beacon light. Hope surged through him. He hurried toward it, keeping low. As he entered the outpost, his heart sank. The place was nearly destroyed. Fallen soldiers, human and alien, lay among the rubble. The comms station was smashed, but the beacon was still working. Elias laid the girl down gently and rushed to the controls. The system was damaged, but with some work he managed to reroute power. Static filled the air, then a faint signal crackled through. "This is Captain Ward," he said urgently. "I've got a civilian. Repeat, I have a Zarathi civilian, priority 1, requesting immediate evac." The signal sputtered. He tried again, adjusting the settings. "This is Captain Ward. Is anyone receiving?" At last, a voice crackled through. "Ward? You're alive? Where are you?" Relief washed over him. "Forward post 7. I've got the Zarathi princess. She's alive but injured. We need evac now." There was silence on the other end, then a stunned reply. "The princess? Copy that. Hold position, Captain. We're sending a dropship." Elias leaned back, exhaling hard. For the first time since the battle began, there was hope. The girl tugged on his sleeve, looking at him questioningly. He smiled. "We're getting out, kid. You'll be safe soon." But safety was never that simple. Minutes later, the sound of screeches echoed through the ruins. The Drail had found the post. Elias's heart sank. He checked his rifle. Half a magazine left. Not nearly enough. He looked at the girl. Her wide violet eyes were fixed on him, full of trust. He set his jaw. "All right, we're going to hold them off. Just a little longer." The first shots tore through the air. Elias returned. Fire, dropping 2 soldiers in quick succession. Plasma blasts lit up the post as enemy forces swarmed. Elias fought with every ounce of strength he had, moving from cover to cover, shielding the girl whenever he could. The Drail pressed harder, hissing war cries, their numbers overwhelming. Elias's rifle clicked empty. He drew his sidearm, firing, until that too ran dry. Just as the enemy closed in, the roar of engines filled the air. A dropship swept down from the sky, cannons blazing, cutting through the Drail ranks. Allied soldiers stormed the ruins, their fire driving the enemy back. Elias collapsed to his knees, exhausted. The girl clung to him, trembling but alive. An armored medic rushed over. "Captain Ward?" Elias nodded weakly. "She's the princess." "Get her out of here." The medic's eyes widened. Then he quickly lifted the girl into careful hands. She reached out desperately for Elias, her small voice calling his name in broken syllables. Elias managed a tired smile. "It's okay. Go with them. You're safe now." She didn't want to let go, but the medic carried her toward the dropship. Elias watched as she looked back at him, her violet eyes filled with something he never expected. Trust. And then she was gone, carried aboard the ship away from the battlefield. Elias slumped against the rubble, his strength finally giving out. He had done it. Against all odds, he had kept her alive. The war still raged, but for now, one small life had been saved, and that one life might change everything. The battle for the ruined city was long over, but Captain Elias Ward could still hear it in his mind. The echoes of plasma fire, the screams of falling ships, the heavy boots of the Drail soldiers searching the rubble. He had lived through all of it, carrying the Zarathi princess through the burning streets and somehow survived. Now, weeks later, he stood in a place that felt like a different universe. The royal hall of the Zarathi Empire stretched endlessly around him, glowing with silver light. The walls rose high, etched with shifting patterns that seemed alive, as though the very stone carried the history of the Zarathi people. Floating crystals lit the chamber, their glow soft and cold. The air smelled faintly of flowers he did not know. Elias felt out of place. He stood in his cleaned but scarred combat armor, a human soldier among towering, graceful figures draped in robes of shimmering light. The Zarathi guards watched him with unreadable expressions, their spears glowing faintly at the tips. At the far end of the hall sat the queen. She was taller than any human, her presence commanding even from a distance. Her silver skin shimmered like moonlight, and her long hair flowed like liquid starlight down her shoulders. Her violet eyes, so much like her daughter's, watched Elias with an intensity that made him stiffen. She was not just a ruler. She was the living symbol of her people, and Elias, a single human soldier, had been summoned before her. He swallowed hard. This wasn't the battlefield. This was something far more dangerous. Politics. A voice rang out across the chamber. "Captain, Elias Ward of Earth," announced one of the heralds. "He is the soldier who carried Her Highness Princess Seraphine from the fire of war." Elias shifted uncomfortably as the eyes of the court turned toward him. He wasn't used to this kind of attention. On the battlefield, he was just another soldier. Here, he was something else, someone who had done the unthinkable. The queen raised her hand, silencing the murmurs. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm and resonant. "Step forward, human." Elias obeyed, his boots echoing on the crystal floor. He stopped a respectful distance away, bowing his head slightly. "Your Majesty." For a long moment the queen studied him. Her gaze seemed to pierce through him, weighing his soul. Elias forced himself not to fidget. At last she spoke. "My daughter lives because of you." Elias nodded once. "I did what anyone would have done." A faint ripple of whispers moved through the court. Some of these Zarathi nobles frowned. Others tilted their heads as though doubtful. The queen raised her hand again, and silence returned. "Not anyone," she said firmly. "Many would have left her. The Drael were everywhere. Even among my own people, there are those who would have seen her as a burden to survival." Elias looked up, meeting her gaze. She was just a child. Leaving her wasn't an option. The queen's violet eyes softened just a fraction. "You speak simply, but your actions speak louder still." A sound of light footsteps broke the heavy silence. From behind the queen, a small figure appeared. The princess. Her leg was healed, wrapped in elegant fabric instead of bandages, and she moved with a slight limp. When her violet eyes spotted Elias, they lit up. With a bright cry of recognition, she hurried forward. Elias froze as she ran across the hall, ignoring the gasps of the nobles. She reached him and grabbed his arm, holding onto him with the same trust she had shown in the ruins. The queen rose to her feet slowly, watching the scene. A murmur spread among the court, astonishment at the bond between the princess and a human soldier. Elias bent slightly, lowering himself to her level. "Hey, kid," he said softly. "Glad to see you're walking again." The princess spoke. His name, Elias. Her accent still broken, but her smile wide. Elias couldn't help smiling back. Close enough. The court watched in silence. For them, this moment was something extraordinary. Zarathi children were raised with formality, taught to hide emotions, never to cling to strangers. And yet here was the heir to the throne, holding on to a human soldier like he was family. The queen's gaze softened further. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, almost thoughtful. "You not only carried her from the fire, you gave her comfort. She has spoken of you every day since." Elias blinked, caught off guard. "She has?" The queen inclined her head. "She called you her protector, her shield." Elias shifted uneasily. "I was just doing my duty, Your Majesty." The queen studied him for a long moment, then slowly descended the steps of her throne. The hall grew silent as she approached, her robes flowing like liquid starlight. She stopped before Elias, her presence towering, yet her expression not unkind. "You are human," she said. "Your people are young among the stars. Many races see you as reckless, primitive. Some believe your kind will bring more chaos than peace." Elias straightened. "Maybe that's true. We're not perfect. But we fight for each other. We don't leave people behind." Her eyes glowed faintly like twin stars. "And now you have proven it, not with words but with blood and fire." She raised her hand, brushing her fingers lightly across the princess's hair. The child looked up at her mother, then back at Elias, refusing to let go of his arm. The queen looked at him and spoke words that echoed through the chamber. "For this, Captain Elias Ward, humanity will no longer be dismissed as lesser. You have shown us the worth of your people." The court erupted in murmurs. Some nobles protested, others nodded in agreement. Recognition of humanity as equals in the alliance was no small matter. It meant access to technology, protection, trade. It meant respect. But Elias barely heard them. He was still staring at the queen, stunned. "I don't understand," he admitted. "I didn't save her for a reward. I just couldn't leave her there." The queen gave the faintest smile, a rare sight. "That is why the reward must be given, because you did not seek it." She turned to the court, raising her voice. "From this day forward, humanity shall stand as equals within the Galactic Council of the Alliance. Let all who doubt remember that when fire fell and hope seemed lost, it was a human who carried the blood of Zerath to safety." The hall shook with the force of her words. Elias stood in stunned silence. A single act of mercy, a decision made in the ruins of war, had just changed the fate of his entire species. The princess tugged on his sleeve again, her voice soft. "Protector." He looked down at her and smiled faintly. "Guess that's me now." After the ceremony, Elias was escorted through the palace, though not as a prisoner or guest, but as someone honored. The halls were filled with statues, glowing, gardens and long streams of water that reflected the stars above. Everywhere he went, Zerathi eyes followed him, some curious, some respectful, some still doubtful. He was shown to a chamber overlooking the great city of the Zerathi capital. Unlike the ruined world he had fought on, this place glowed with life. Towers of crystal rose into the sky, connected by bridges of light. Ships floated gracefully above, their silver hulls shining. Elias stood at the balcony, staring at it all. A soldier from Earth raised on simple streets, now standing in the heart of an empire older than human history. He shook his head, half in disbelief. "All because I couldn't walk away from a kid." The door opened behind him. He turned to see the queen herself enter, her robes flowing softly. The guards did not follow. She had come alone. Elias stiffened. "Your Majesty." The queen studied him for a long moment before speaking. "My daughter will not forget you, nor will I." Elias shifted. "I don't know if I deserve all this. I didn't do it for politics. I just did what I thought was right." The queen's eyes softened, the weight of centuries behind them. "That is why it matters. Many fight for glory. Few fight for what is right." She stepped closer, her gaze steady. "Captain Ward, you are more than a soldier now. You are a symbol, to my people, and to your own." Elias exhaled slowly. "That's a lot of weight to carry." The queen's faint smile returned. "You carried my daughter through fire. I believe you can carry this as well." Elias looked out at the glowing city once more. Maybe she was right. Maybe one act really could change everything. That night, as he rested in the royal chamber, Elias thought of Earth. He thought of the families waiting for news, of soldiers still fighting across the stars. He thought of the princess, safe now, sleeping without fear. And he thought of the queen's words. He had not sought glory. He had only sought to do what was right. But sometimes, doing the right thing was what made history. The Zerathi palace shimmered with light as Captain Elias Ward stepped into the great hall once more. Today was not a day of war, but a day of honor. The air was calm, unlike the chaos of battle he had survived, yet it carried a weight all its own. Every corner of the hall seemed alive with the history of the Zarathi people, and every pair of eyes seemed to watch him carefully, measuring, judging, and waiting. Elias felt a strange mixture of pride and unease. He had faced death countless times on the battlefield, yet standing here amid the rulers of a galactic empire felt far more intimidating. Not a single weapon in sight, yet the room held more power than any gun or ship he had ever known. The queen was seated on her throne at the far end of the hall, her presence calm yet commanding. Beside her, Princess Seraphine watched him with wide, curious eyes. She did not hide behind formalities, nor did she cling to him as she had in the ruins. Instead, she stood tall, a child growing into the elegance of her species, her trust in him evident in her gaze. A herald stepped forward, voice echoing, "By decree of Her Majesty the Zarathi Queen, Captain Elias Wardeverth is hereby honored for his courage, loyalty, and unwavering protection of Princess Seraphine during the siege of Zalthara." Elias froze for a moment, overwhelmed. Recognition was not something he had sought. His duty had been enough, yet here he was being formally acknowledged by an entire empire. The queen raised a hand. Silence fell instantly. "Captain Ward," she said, her voice calm but resonant, "your actions have not only saved the life of my daughter but have also restored faith in humanity among my people. You have shown that courage is not measured by size, power, or history, but by the choices we make when others cannot defend themselves." Elias bowed his head. "Your Majesty, You saved her," the queen interrupted gently, "because it was right. Not for glory, not for reward. That is why the reward I offer you must be meaningful, not for yourself, but for the future of your people." He looked up, curious, as her gaze swept across the hall. "For my people?" he repeated. "Yes," she said. "Humans have been dismissed too often in galactic affairs. Your courage has proven that your species is capable of honor, loyalty, and sacrifice equal to any alien race. For this, humanity will gain recognition, protection, and access to technology previously withheld." Murmurs spread through the court. Some nobles whispered excitedly, others frowned, their expressions a mix of surprise and doubt. Recognition of humanity was unprecedented. It was not just a personal reward for Elias, it was a shift in interstellar politics. Elias felt a surge of pride tempered by humility. He had acted as a soldier, doing his duty, never expecting this. And now his simple act of courage had altered the course of history. The queen's violet eyes softened as she continued, "In addition, Captain Ward, you shall be named guardian of the throne. Your role will be to advise and protect not only Princess Seraphine but the alliance between our peoples. Your courage will be remembered in our histories, and your actions will set a standard for others to follow." The princess stepped forward, her small hand reaching out for him. "Protector," she whispered, the word simple yet heavy with meaning. Elias knelt slightly to meet her gaze. "I'll do my best," he said quietly. "That's all I can promise." The queen motioned for him to rise. "Your best is more than enough, Captain, and it will not go unappreciated." From behind the throne, a courier brought a small, elegant case. The queen opened it, revealing an array of shimmering crystals, sleek devices, and a data module filled with technology, far beyond anything humans had. "This," the queen said, "is our gift to your species. Knowledge, tools, and methods to advance your capabilities. Use them wisely. Share them with your people so that humanity may grow in strength and wisdom among the stars." Elias held the module reverently. This was more than a medal or honor. It was a bridge between civilizations. Through this, humans would gain not only respect but the chance to thrive and stand as equals in the Galactic Alliance. He glanced at the princess, who was watching him with her usual mix of awe and trust. He realized that this small life he had saved had created ripples far beyond what he could imagine. One act of bravery had forged a connection between entire species. Later, Elias walked through the palace gardens with the princess. The corridors had been cleared, and sunlight, or whatever passed for sunlight in the Crystal City, dappled the floating pools of water and paths lined with luminous plants. "Captain Ward," the princess said softly, "why did you help me?" Elias looked down at her, noting the seriousness in her small voice. "Because it was right," he replied simply. "No one should be left behind, no matter who they are. No one." She thought for a moment, then nodded. "You are different from the others. You care." He smiled faintly. "I guess I do." Her hand found his again, smaller now but firm. "I will remember you. Always." Elias felt a warmth in his chest. This was not just recognition from the Queen or even the technology he carried. This was the personal bond he had formed with the princess. In war, humans often fought for survival, or for orders, or for medals. Rarely, they fought for trust. And in this, he had succeeded. Back in the Great Hall, the Queen held a private audience with Elias. "Captain Ward," she said, "the Alliance faces many challenges. The Drail are not finished, and other forces may test us. Your role will not be easy, but you will have support. I trust you to use it wisely." "I will, Your Majesty," he replied. "I only ask that my people are safe, and that we can continue to grow as allies." The Queen inclined her head. "It is granted. Your people will be recognized as equals with rights and responsibilities in the Council. The humans will be protected. And your name will be remembered as the first human to stand beside the Zerathi in this way." Elias felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He had survived the war, saved a life, and now opened a path for his entire species. He had acted for one child, yet the consequences reached across galaxies. That evening, as the palace quieted, Elias sat beside the princess in her chambers. She was no longer the scared child he had carried through the ruins. She laughed lightly at a story he told her about his first day in the army, her violet eyes sparkling. "You are funny," she said softly, "even for a human." He chuckled. "Not sure how that counts as a reward, but I'll take it." She tilted her head. "You are my protector, and now also everyone's protector." Elias felt the full weight of that. One man's courage had grown into a responsibility larger than anything he had known. Yet, he did not falter. He would protect her. He would protect humanity's place among the stars. Outside, the city glimmered under alien moons. Ships moved silently across the sky, and the palace stood as a beacon of hope and unity. Elias realized that his life had changed forever. He had fought in wars, faced impossible odds, and yet this peace, the recognition, the reward, the bond with a princess, was the greatest victory of all. And somewhere in the quiet, he made a promise to himself. He would not fail. Not the princess. Not the Queen. Not humanity. Because one act of courage, one decision to save a life had led to this moment. And he would honor it with everything he had. The next days were a whirlwind of training, briefings, and introductions. Elias learned about Zerathi technology, strategies, and customs. He taught humans how to use new tools, bridging the gap between two civilizations. He met human diplomats and scientists, sharing what he had learned. Everywhere he went, he saw the effect of one human soldier's choice. Trust had been earned. Respect had been won. The alliance was stronger because one life had been saved, and at night when he returned to the princess's chambers, she greeted him with a smile, reminding him of why it all mattered. "You kept your promise," she said softly. Elias looked at her, feeling a warmth and pride he had never known before. "Always," he replied. The reward he had received was not just honor, nor technology, nor even recognition. It was something far greater. The chance to change the future. One life, one choice, one human soldier, Elias Ward, had made all the difference, and the galaxy would never forget it. The Zerathi capital had become a home away from home for Captain Elias Ward. though he still thought of Earth with a quiet longing. Days of war had hardened him, but weeks in the palace showed him another side of the galaxy, one of diplomacy, responsibility, and hope. Elias had spent his time learning the ways of the Zirathi, understanding their customs, their technology, and their governance. He had trained with the Princess Seraphine, teaching her tactics for survival, strategy, and courage. Yet despite all the learning, he never forgot the streets of the ruined city where he first carried her to safety. That memory was etched in his mind, vivid as ever. The screams, the smoke, the desperation, and the quiet trust of a child clinging to him for her life. He often wondered if his actions that day had truly changed the future. Could one human soldier really alter the course of history? The answer was now obvious. The Alliance Council met in the heart of the Zirathi capital. Representatives from dozens of races gathered, their voices echoing across the chamber. Human delegates, once treated as observers, now stood with confidence. Their rights had been formally recognized, their voices given weight. Elias sat quietly among them, not as a warrior but as a guardian of the throne, the official protector and advisor for Princess Seraphine. He had earned their respect not through titles or power but through action, the simple, courageous act of saving a child. Across the hall, the Zirathi queen observed him with satisfaction. Her daughter, now taller and more confident, stood beside her. Seraphine's violet eyes swept the council and then met Elias's gaze. There was pride there, admiration, and the quiet acknowledgement of a bond that had formed in the ashes of war. One of the elder counselors, a dignified figure with scales that shimmered like bronze, addressed the assembly. Humanity has proven itself capable of courage and honor beyond what we expected. Let their actions remind us that character, not history or size, defines strength. Murmurs of agreement ran through the hall. Elias's chest tightened. He had never sought recognition, yet here it was, spreading across the galaxy. After the meeting, the princess approached him. She moved with grace, though still carrying the slight limp from her earlier injury. "Captain Ward," she said softly, "the council respects you. They admire humans because of you." Elias shook his head with a tired smile. "It's not me, Seraphine. It's what I did. Anyone could have done the same." The princess's violet eyes sparkled. "No, not anyone. You were brave. You cared when it mattered most. That's why you're different." He looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. "I just did what I had to do. You were my responsibility." She placed a small hand on his arm. "And you fulfilled it. You saved me, and not just me. You saved the trust of our people in humanity. You changed everything." Elias swallowed, realizing the truth in her statement. One soldier's courage had not only preserved a life, it had changed interstellar politics, alliances, and perceptions. One act had created a legacy. Days turned into weeks. Elias worked with Zirathi engineers, sharing knowledge with human scientists, helping design new ships, medical tools, and defenses. He trained new soldiers, teaching them not only tactics, but the values he had learned in the field: courage, trust, and loyalty. The princess grew rapidly. Her confidence in leadership increased, and she often turned to Elias for advice. Together they practiced strategy, honing her skills so that one day she could rule wisely and justly. She admired him, not as a soldier, but as a mentor, a protector, and a friend. Elias watched her with pride. The child who had once clung to him in fear was now a strong young leader in training. He knew she would one day inspire her people and others across the galaxy, just as he had helped protect her. One evening, as the twin moons of the Zirathi world rose in the sky, Elias and the princess walked along a crystal bridge overlooking the capital. Lights shimmered below, reflecting in the floating pools that lined the city. The air was calm, almost peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos he had faced during the siege. "You know," Seraphine said quietly, "sometimes I still dream of that day in the ruins. I was so scared. And then you came." Elias smiled faintly. "I remember. You were brave too. You trusted me even when it was terrifying. That made it easier. The princess nodded. I still trust you. Always. Elias felt a quiet pride. And I'll always be here. Not just for you, but for your people and for humanity. We've come a long way, Seraphine. She glanced at him, her violet eyes shining. Because of you, humans are respected now. Because of you, we will stand together. He shook his head humbly. It's not just me. It's all the humans who fought and risked everything. But maybe one human can make a difference, and it starts with a choice. Word of Elias's courage spread far beyond the Zarathi capital. Human world celebrated the recognition, using the knowledge and technology gifted by the Zarathi to strengthen colonies, improve medical care, and advance research. Young soldiers looked to his story as an example of bravery. The phrase, "one human can change everything," became common in schools and training academies across Earth and allied planets. The Drael and other hostile species took note as well. Where once humans had been underestimated, now they were respected. Humanity's role in the Galactic Alliance was secure. Elias had never imagined that a single act, carrying a frightened child through a burning city, could ripple outward so far. But it had. The galaxy now knew that courage and compassion could shape history. Years passed. The princess grew into her role as a leader, guided by the lessons of her youth and the wisdom of her protector. The bond between her and Elias remained strong. She called him her guardian, her mentor, and sometimes, in quiet moments, her friend. Elias returned to Earth occasionally, sharing knowledge and strengthening ties between humans and Zarathi. Each visit reminded him of the streets of the ruined city, of the fear in the princess's eyes and the trust that had been placed in him. He carried that memory always, not as a burden, but as a reminder of why courage mattered. The Zarathi and humans built a lasting alliance, one founded on mutual respect, trust, and the memory of a brave soldier who acted when it mattered most. One quiet evening, Elias stood in the palace gardens, looking at the stars above. The moons of the Zarathi world reflected in the water, and ships moved gracefully across the sky. Beside him, the princess had grown tall, regal, and confident. "You know," she said softly, "people will tell stories of you, Captain Ward, humans and Zarathi alike. They will remember what you did." Elias shook his head with a smile. "I just did what anyone should do. But if it helps, then I'm glad." She leaned closer, eyes shining. "You didn't just help. You inspired. You changed everything." He looked out at the city, the lights, the ships, and the endless possibilities of the stars. One soldier, one choice, one life saved. Yet it had altered the path of countless lives, civilizations, and histories. Elias exhaled softly. "Then I'll keep doing my part. For her, for my people, for the galaxy." The princess smiled. "And we will remember you. Always." Elias nodded. The legacy of one human, a soldier who chose courage over fear, compassion over indifference, had become more than just a story. It had become a foundation for a new era. In a galaxy filled with conflict and uncertainty, one simple truth remained. Even a single act of bravery could change everything. And Captain Elias Ward had proven it.